Most societies and nations of the world believe that it is normal and appropriate to protect the right of persons with disability against all exploitation, discrimination, or a depraved treatment that is abusive in nature. For this reason, the Nigerian first ratified the United Nations Convention on the Right of People with Disability, CRPD, in 2007, and its Optima Protocol in 2016. This was also adopted by the 30th Ordinary Session of the Assembly held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, on the 29th day of January 2018. Since then, more civil society groups and people with disability have called on the government to put into practice that which has been taken for granted. To this end, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu signed the instrument of ratification of the African Union Protocol to ensure that the rights of persons with disability are protected. Therefore, for the President to sign Charter Instrument on Right of Persons with Disability, our guests will tell us the implication of this for national development. I am your carrier, Clinton. Welcome. Now, joining me in the studio to discuss the Charter on Rights of Persons with Disability is Dr. Chike Okogu, Founder and Chief Responsibility Officer, the Center for Ability Rehabilitation and Empowerment Care. You're welcome to Nigeria today.
Thank you, Kira, and good evening, Nigeria.
Well, also with me in the studio is James Lalu, the Executive Secretary, National Commission for People with Disability. You're welcome to Nigeria today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Also with us in the studio is an interpreter, Mr. Timothy Tinat. You're welcome to Nigeria today.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with you, Dr. Chike. The President has endorsed the instrument for ratification of this charter, like we've rightly introduced. What does this mean to persons living with disability in Nigeria?
Well, earlier in the day, when I was asked the same question, I said there was no hope. But now that I see the Executive Secretary here, I think we now have renewed hope. Why did I say so? Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of America, said something about knowing the right thing to do. And I read, he said, knowing what's right doesn't mean much unless you do what's right. General Schwarzkopf of the Gulf War era says the same thing, that the truth of the matter is that you always know the right thing to do. The hard part is doing it right. I give kudos to President Muhammadu Buhari, who signed the law, the act that gave us, produced the commission and the ESs here as a product of that. Now that President Bola Tinubu has signed the African Charter, it means that we're going a notch higher. So with this, we'll combine the Disability Act signed by the President Muhammadu Buhari. Now President Bola Tinubu has put his name in gold. He too has signed the African Charter. We'll combine this with the US protocol that we have signed, and it should be way higher. Implementation, indeed, is what is the challenge. We have a commission of persons with disability. Yeah, as a matter of fact, January next year we'll be celebrating 5 years of that. But how strong have they made this commission work? Because at this point now, we are at the hegemony stage. Thankfully, I was part of those, when we started this fight, I was part of the I joined the fight, I wasn't born disabled. I suffered a disability on my way to the airport with spinal cord injuries, aftermath an accident. So that's how I got blessed to be in this beautiful family. And of course, I joined in the cause for it, worked with a lot of other great people. Today, we have the disability law that protects the rights of persons with disabilities. And what that means is that we move from the master-servant relationship that we had with previous governments, we're now on the table because we now have an executive secretary of a commission. What we want to go into now is the distribution and allocation of the resources. What is coming to us via the commission, we must say it loud and clear. We hope that with this charter it will be a lot better for us. We need more. He needs more funding or more support. Everything that can be given to him so that he can function and do what is right. When the fuel subsidy removal happened, if he had money independently in the commission, he would have been able to deploy buses and all the things that would have saved and helped persons with disabilities. Transportation costs survival is a big problem for any person with disabilities. Because you saw him now, he came with an interpreter. So if he's not supported by government now, if he was a private individual, he has to pay 2 transport fares. Same goes with me, I need a carer. Same goes with the blind person who needs a guide, oftentimes to move around in Nigeria. So it's double jeopardy at that point.
Okay.
But if he was well funded,
Dr. Chike, I'll have to stop you there to allow James to say something. Now, still talking about the charter, James, what if, I know Nigeria is one of the member states that just signed, and we still need more of the state to sign, of course, for it to come into force. Now, if it comes into force, how can this charter promote the right of persons living with disability in Africa as well as Nigeria?
Thank you so very much. The African Union Charter on the Right of Persons with Disabilities is a very, very important instrument today for the disability community around the African sub-region. In Nigeria, I want to take this opportunity to appreciate His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for signing this charter yesterday. Sincerely speaking, there was advocacy and commitment from the disability community to see Nigeria join into this. Nigerian government was, since in February this year, we traveled to Addis Ababa to sign this document. First of all, after signing the document, we came back to come and start the process for its ratification. I'm very, very happy that the new president is starting on a very, very right footing when it comes to protecting the right and dignity of persons with disabilities in Nigeria, in the African sub-region. Nigeria is we call Nigeria as the giant of Africa, and therefore persons with disabilities in different other countries should look up to Nigeria for leadership. I have been here since we assumed office. We receive different African countries coming to Nigeria to come and learn what is happening at the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. The passage of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act 2018 was a direct compliance with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, to which Nigeria signed and ratified, making Nigeria a significant party to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Then after doing that, Nigeria went ahead to comply with that by signing the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act 2018, exactly on the 17th of January 2019. Nigeria went ahead again to establish the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Today, when you look at the African Charter on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, when you look at the content herein, Nigeria is already way ahead of the convention already. There are a lot of things that the Nigerian government have already been able to put in place that are already responding to the commitment of Nigeria as a country for the enforcement of this convention as you see it here. When you look at the area of accessibility, it calls on Nigerian government and all the state parties to come up with a minimum accessibility standard. The minimum accessibility standard is expected to provide the necessary dimensions and every other specifications for accessibility facilities that were to be fit into a building to make a building completely accessible for persons with disabilities. Nigeria have already done that already. The national accessibility regulation is already on ground, and Nigerian government is already very much ready for the commencement of the enforcement of this regulation, which is expected to start on the 16th of January 2024, that is immediately next year. Apart from doing this, the Nigerian government has went ahead again to make sure that we bring out inclusive education, which is part of the access to education for persons with disabilities. Today, the National Roadmap on Education, which has been already launched by the Federal Ministry for Education, have incorporated inclusive education for persons with disabilities. And additionally, sign language interpretation, as you see, is a part of this charter here. As you see, the Nigerian government, through the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, has already initiated a full degree course for sign language in Nigeria. It has already started at the Federal University in Latvia at the moment, and we are expected to expand it to other universities. We started it in Latvia. The program is fully funded by the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. So when you look around this, we are right now working on to cooperating of the disability aspect of it in the curriculum for primary and secondary education, as well as initiating the faculty for disability studies in our tertiary institutions, as we are already working with the NUC. So when you look around this, Nigeria is already moving ahead of this charter. Nigeria remains very, very much committed to the enforcement of the charter. The signing of this charter by the president is to show that Nigeria is going to provide leadership for other African countries to make sure that we do what is right for the disability community. The president is starting on the right pedestal. And when you look around this, when you see the political appointment already by the president, we already have a minister who is a person with a disability, and others are still coming in.
James, you're already answering almost all my questions, James. I think you give me some time so that Dr. Chiche here can tell us. Now, Dr. Chiche, James has mentioned something I wanted to talk about, about being how far we have gone in level of inclusivity, of persons living with disability, especially we're talking about the administration and appointment. Are you satisfied with the level?
Well, I will first say, on behalf of the community, you may call us Oliver Twist. We are not. We are not because, granted, we have two circumstantial cases of persons with disabilities that are in government now at ministerial level. We're proud to say that the Minister of Police Affairs is one of us, and I think the Minister of State Education, if I'm not mistaken. But it doesn't end there because, we need more SAs, more PAs. It's the states that have gone ahead to do such. We have states who have appointed SAs and PAs. We'll plead with the federal government to do so. Yeah, there are going to be board appointments and all that, but in all the announcements, anytime we hear announcements being made on TV, appointments and all that, our ears are always itching. So we're telling President Bola Tinubu, we also have what it takes to bring good governance and leadership to the table. We can do it. You see, Ban Ki-moon, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the former UN Secretary General, says, and I quote, that a country that does not capture her persons with disabilities tends to lose 15% of our gross domestic product. So right now, not using PWDs effectively is making government lose 15% of her GDP. And if you look in that direction, you will see that it's huge. 30 million persons estimated in Nigeria is a lot. And if you look in that direction, you will see that there's so much talent, so much gifts, special ability. They can do so much. So we plead with the government to look in that direction and satisfy that community. Make sure that more people are appointed, because that will elicit that hope that we're talking about, the renewed hope when you see your fellow person with disability, two things. Soon it will be my turn. And if he can do it, that means nothing about us without us is being taken into consideration. I'm proud of NTA. I came in here, it was a smooth ride into your studio. So that means NTA has gone ahead to implement the charter because my rights were well protected, I have access and everything. That's his kudos. But we need more of NTAs to do the same thing. There are some broadcast houses that I cannot go into because they are on floors above, no elevator, so it cuts me out with my wheelchair. And then, of course, we're talking, you see, he has reeled out all the work that they are doing from the government part. We do hope, that's why I said earlier, if he can be given more impetus is funding. Once he has what he needs to do the work, like some of the things that he said here is the doing part of it, but it has to go further because it's one thing to discuss this and, you know, talk about it at government level. It takes a lot to now deepen it into the community. If people go to the hospitals today who are persons with disabilities, this charter is not effective there because, take the classical example now, how many hospitals have interpreters to interpret for that pregnant woman who is deaf? Or for any deaf person? How many hospitals? So we can go on and on, but I'm glad that with this charter now, if I were President Tinubu, what we would do further is to have persons with disabilities running with this document so that every angle of it, education, health, financial inclusion, everything that is talked about here, have one person with disability run with it. So that way they can all report to the commission or report to the Ministry of Humanitarian, to wherever. You know, they can also be domiciled in his office there. But they run with it so that the full implementation of this, because he cannot do it alone, honestly speaking. Yes, it's the commission who has the powers to implement and all that. But indeed, he can coordinate, yes, but he cannot do it alone. So we need more people to come join him, to support him in the commission. More PWDs out there who can help, you know, bring special advisors or special assistants or whatever way you want to call them. But for each part of this charter, because if you go through the charter, you see that there are so many angles to it. And I think it is important to run each one with a touch bearer, you know, so that at the end of the day, it will be properly implemented. This is beyond government rhetorics. There has to be action. It has to be actionable. And that's what I was trying to say when I opened up with the Theodore Roosevelt quote. We know the right thing to do, but doing the right thing is the hardest part of it all.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, James, I would want you to really explain to us now what are some of the challenges that has been you foresee as person living with disability that you think should be nipped in the bud if persons living with disability should have sense of belonging. Talking about, because now we are focusing more on the government, but what about the private sector? What are some of these things that should be put in place to ensure that persons living with disability have this sense of belonging?
Thank you so very much. One important thing here is the area of the enforcement of the Prohibition of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act. There are challenges, and part of the challenges is for us to be able to get everybody on board to be able to cooperate with the provisions of the law. Right now, as I'm talking to you, we already have the provisions of the law like Section 28 and Section 29, which provide for employment for persons with disabilities. And in the government cycle here, the way you look at the new public service rules, it also made and emphasized that issue of employment for persons with disabilities. But sometimes we find it very difficult because some of the heads of agencies and other apparatus that is very difficult to comply with the provision of that law. At the moment, some are complying with the provision on which we have been able to enroll a lot of persons with disabilities getting employment. I must use this opportunity to commend the Director General of the National Youth Service Corps, NYAC, and I must use this opportunity to also commend the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation and other agencies who have complied with the provisions of this law. And today, when you go to these places, their employment, they truly make provisions for the 5% employment opportunity for persons with disabilities, which are working in the place. Another area you can see very clearly is, as you rightly said, from the private sector, we have engaged them quite right. We have started engaging them last year. We had a meeting with a lot of them in Lagos, where we had discussion about compliance with the provisions of the discrimination against persons with disability prohibition. There are a lot of things with the private sector. Some of them do not even understand where we are coming from and where we are going. But I am happy that that meeting have made a lot of them to open up, and they are ready to cooperate with us. They have already, some of them have already started providing employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. Organizations like NTA, like Access Bank and others have already started providing employment for persons with disabilities, which we are working together directly with them to make sure they will provide these opportunities for the disability community. On the issue of reasonable accommodation in the workplace, to make sure that they have accessibility in their working place. We have done that. We observe some of them have tried to provide these accessibility issues, but the variation in the dimensions of these accessibility issues become so worrisome. That was why we had to go back to the drawing board. It took us almost 2 years to be able to draft and bring out the national accessibility regulation, which have the clear dimension so that you can see that the accessibility facilities are uniform everywhere around the country. The provisions of the law have already provided about 5-year period within which we are expected to provide the necessary advice to all of these institutions to make sure that they make their place accessible for persons with disabilities. The proper enforcement is supposed to start on in January 2024, and the powers provided to the Commission, but according to the provision of the regulation, the Commission have the power to seal buildings. And therefore, commencing from January, the Commission is coming out in full force to make sure that we do everything possible for the enforcement of this, so that we can make sure that we come in compliance to the provisions of the law. Additionally, our commitment as an institution to make sure that, as Chike has already said, there are very, very brilliant persons with disabilities today in Nigeria. When you look at it from the classes, different classes of degrees, from diploma, first degree, master's degree, PhD levels, and we have some who are even professors on ground who have disability. So we look at this, yes, the issue of provision of political appointments, some states have started, some states are doing their best, some states have to do more. Just yesterday, I received a call that the Speaker of the House of Representatives, also based on a request, have approved appointment of persons with disabilities as legislative ages, 2 of them. The Senate President has also granted approval for 2 of them into his office as well, who are supposed to work there. For the President, yes, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation has made commitment for the inclusion of persons with disabilities in appointment in boards and parastatals of the Federal Government of Nigeria, and which we are still following up to make sure that these opportunities are provided for persons with disabilities. In the last administration, we have an opportunity for senior special assistant on disability, special assistants on disability, and which I am very, very sure that the government of Renew Hope is also going to reflect that and bring that on board. We are going to have a official special advisor on disability affairs, official senior special assistant on disability affairs. They are coming on board. Once they come on board, they are supposed to come and cooperate and work together with the Commission to amplify the activities of the Commission and make sure that we work together as one stronger team for the proper enforcement of the provisions of the discrimination against persons with disabilities in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, James. I know you still go on and on. I can see the excitement. Well, that's been it in Nigeria today. I'd like to appreciate our guests for their insight. I had with me Dr. Chike Okogu, Founder and Chief Responsibility Officer, the Center for Ability Rehabilitation and Empowerment Care. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
Yeah, we also...
Permit me to quickly say that much as we're not where we want to be, we're definitely not where we used to be. So we're a work in progress.
Well, that's good news. Okay. Yeah, we also had James Lalu, the Executive Secretary, National Commission for Persons with Disability. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And also we had an interpreter who's Timothy Tinat. Thank you for the job. Well done. And that's it on Nigeria Today. I am your carrier, Clinton. Goodbye.
Our well-researched, packaged, and live programs keep you abreast